Lord Frost, a key Boris Johnson ally and at his shoulder for years of tetchy Brexit negotiations, has resigned from government, abandoning his seat at the top table, piling more pressure on Johnson's leadership, citing concerns about his direction of travel. It caps months of disquiet in the Brexit wing of the Tory party over slow progress in Northern Ireland, a perceived authoritarian COVID policy, and expensive net zero commitments. And of course, there was Friday's disastrous by-election defeat too in North Shropshire. The deal for Tories was always this: Boris Johnson in there was worth it because he's the voice of Brexit and he could win Tories elections. But there was always a risk that he'd become a liability. So add to that mix COVID, allegations of sleaze, allegations of Christmas parties. And that calculation, for some, is changing.
Is it time for a new Prime Minister, Mr. Javid?
The Health Secretary not only has an NHS to protect, but with Lord Frost's resignation, an increasingly beleaguered Prime Minister too.
He's entitled to his views, of course he is, but my own view in terms of the direction of travel, dealing with this pandemic, of course, which was something that no one expected at the time that we won the last election, but also getting on with the priorities of the British people, whether that's investment in the NHS, the levelling up agenda. This is all a huge part of what the government's getting on with.
We may well be in the middle of a pandemic, but the topic of Johnson's future is more fisticuffs than fist bumps among many Tory backbenchers, 100 of whom rebelled last week against new COVID measures. Look at this leaked thread from the Clean Global Brexit WhatsApp group of Tory MPs, when Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries counselled that although regicide is in the DNA of the party, a bit of loyalty wouldn't go amiss. Less than a minute later, hardliner Steve Baker dumped her out of the group, writing, "Enough's enough." Channel 4 News can reveal Baker then sent this message to an MP who objected to him removing Mrs. Dorries. Alongside a cartoon lampooning Johnson as the hero of Brexit, Baker wrote, "I'm not bitter because I made my choices willingly, knowing the consequences. But I'm not taking any bullshit either." Baker's invitations to number 10, under this PM at least, are likely to be numbered, with friends of Nadine Dorries telling us tonight fellow Brexiteers are dismayed at Steve's increasingly bizarre and delusional behaviour. Baker himself declined to respond, but the infighting and Lord Frost's dramatic resignation has been, shall we say, noted, though few are calling time quite yet.
Don't try and predict tomorrow, let alone next week or next year. I think the Prime Minister has been weakened, there's no doubt about that. A lot will hinge on what happens over COVID over the course of the next couple of months, how well the economy recovers over the next couple of months, but certainly he is far, far more vulnerable now than he has been at any point since he became Prime Minister in July 2019.
That said, it hasn't stopped speculation on who might or might not move in next. And as all leaders know, it pays to keep potential challengers close. In the last hour, it's been announced the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, will inherit Lord Frost's role negotiating the still unresolved Northern Ireland Protocol. But the headaches for Johnson are by no means over. The detail here is important. Frost's departure had much to do with the UK government softening opposition to the European Court of Justice in solving Northern Ireland trade issues. Where does Truss stand on that? As if a global pandemic wasn't enough, Brexit too is back on the agenda.
Kemi and Zarin reporting. Well, I spoke earlier to the Belgian MEP, Philippe Lambert, and I began by asking him how David Frost's resignation is being received in Europe.
David Frost is a strange animal. I mean, when he represented the interest of the British Whisky Association, he was a fervent pro-Remain supporter, and then he turned a hard Brexiteer. When he was appointed as a Brexit secretary, he came to Brussels delivering a very nationalistic British discourse. So it would seem that he was a hardliner all along. And maybe he understood that Boris Johnson wants to take a more, say, lenient course with the European Union at the moment because he's got already too many fronts to fight on. Maybe that's what he read, and that led him to decide to leave. But again, this is only speculation.
What was he like?
he was quite stubborn in the sense that, no amount of advances from the European side in terms of alleviating the difficulties on the ground in Northern Ireland would come anyway to satisfy him. So it was as if he was on a sort of crusade,
Do you think David Frost going will improve negotiations at all now post-Brexit?
Well, we will see who Boris Johnson appoints as his successor, and that will, I think, give a signal. My understanding is indeed that the Prime Minister is taken between a rock and many hard places, and indeed maybe it would be better for him to avoid too many trouble with the European Union, because at the end of the day, we remain a crucial business partner of the UK, and maybe it's not a good idea to make things worse.
Don't the EU also need to play ball as well with the Northern Ireland Protocol?
We are talking here about the integrity of the single market, and indeed we don't want stuff to be surreptitiously shipped in. There has been, I think, proposals by the European Union to alleviate the controls, because indeed not everything is really a risk to the integrity of the single market. So we have to be pragmatic here. But the one thing that was really strange is the insistence of Lord Frost at removing the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice over the Northern Irish Protocol, where all the people on the ground in Northern Ireland said that, well, basically this was not a problem. They were very worried about the practicalities of implementing the protocol, and not at all by the legal construct of it.
Do you feel like the government's forgotten about Brexit at the moment, given that we're dealing with so much with the pandemic?
Yes, and well, we might be tempted to do the same thing, because guess what? We are also facing the pandemic in Europe and many other issues, thinking of the situation at all borders in Ukraine, in Belarus, etc. Yet we would like the relationship to settle a bit into a more stable form. And indeed, if we could leave ideology at the door and be pragmatic, that would help everyone, I think, especially people on the ground in Northern Ireland.
OK, Philip Lambert, thank you very much for joining us and speaking to us. Thank you.